Welcome back to the channel, welcome back to the vlog, and welcome back to the next episode of my series of Behind the Raw, where I take you with me into Lightroom Classic and I talk you through my edit, my workflow, and my thoughts on a particular image from a recent shoot. I also share with you any mistakes that I might have made so that you don't have to. Now, this week it is all about mistakes. So it was the 10th of October, and the Aurora came to Ireland, and I had an opportunity to go shoot it, and I said, okay, I am not going to miss this opportunity. I'd already missed the May the 10th one, and prior to that, I'd only ever shot the Aurora once, and it was only briefly, not far from home here. So I said, okay, I'm going to get this opportunity. And when I arrived, I was excited because I picked a very interesting place to be able to shoot the Aurora. But I made some silly mistakes, which meant that I didn't get the most out of the shoot that I would have liked to have gotten. So I'm going to jump over onto the computer here. I'm going to talk you through one image that we're going to edit, but I'll also show you a lot of the mistakes that I would have made and try and explain why I did them, why you shouldn't do them, so that next time you can actually benefit from my errors. Let's go. Right, so before I jump into the computer here, normally what I always do is just go in and show you an image from the recent shoot and edit that, and I still will do that. But for this episode, I want to share with you the different mistakes that I would have made throughout the entire shoot. So I'm going to open up my finished files, and I'm going to show you all of the images that I decided to edit after this shoot. Now, the colors were absolutely amazing, and like I said, I haven't really shot the Aurora before, and you'd think that I would know better, and I thought I would have known better, but I made some very simple errors. Now, the colors were fantastic, like I said, and in honor of that, I'm doing this in my background, my Aurora colors. I hope you like it. But yeah, we're going to jump on here now to my Finder, and I'm going to show you all the images first and foremost that I would have taken from that evening. So in the background here is the image that we're going to edit, but before I do that, I want to show you this and the mistakes that I would have made. So this is the stunning scene that I would have had. You've got this statue, which is for a chieftain statue, and I was looking north here, so the sun was setting in the northwest, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to use this as my foreground. So I took a couple of shots even before we got to sunset, and you can see I think it was going to be a great subject to be able to have with the Aurora. Then we start to go into sunset, starting into blue hour, and then all of a sudden I noticed that the color was there. So this is the first shot that I'd taken, and as you can see here in the background, you still have the residual light from sunset. So it really was there the moment after sunset. So I took this shot, and then I decided to say, okay, hang on, I'm going to do a time lapse. And I did a time lapse, and during that time lapse I got some great footage. But the mistake I made, number one, was not getting enough shots before I even decided to do the time lapse. So I did the time lapse, and when the time lapse had finished, then the Aurora was all the way over here on the left hand side. So I'd actually missed the peak of it coming over the top of the structure. Now, the second thing then that I had done here, and I'll show you this when we get to the edit, but this is the image that we are going to edit, so I'm usually going to see the final edit before we even get there. But if you notice here, I don't have much structure in the Aurora, and that's because I went for too long a shutter speed. So the reason for that is the lens that I have is an f4, and I can still get nice shots with an f4, but I needed to ramp up my ISO to be able to get a faster shutter speed. I think this was around 20 or 25 seconds. We'll show it in a moment anyway, as it was, but that was the first mistake that I would have done, and I regretted, obviously, because I couldn't fix that after that. So I took this shot, and then the next shot after that, you can see the Aurora was starting to fade, and then the Aurora calmed down. So I still continue to take shots, and I said, okay, I'm going to go for faster shutter speeds. So the faster shutter speeds I was doing wasn't really enough either, because I should have gone even faster. So if we scroll through these, you can see the way that the Aurora was moving. Then I went, okay, I'm going to go for a longer one, but then I noticed what my mistake was. And if you look at the structure here, it's sharp, but it's not sharp. So looking at these, you can see all of these pieces of metal that are at the back of that. So it's relatively sharp, but it's not pin sharp. And that really annoyed me when I started to look at the images after the fact. Now, I had set my camera onto manual, and I had gotten my focus right. My focus was spot on. But what I did do is I moved the camera ever so slightly, and I must have touched the focus ring, and then I lost the exposure. So from this point on, me thinking that all of my images were going to be sharp, look at them now as I go through here, you can see the Aurora dancing around the background. all of this part of the structure is not as sharp as it could be. Secondly then was my choice of location. So you can see quite a lot of ambient light here. So I had a road that passed up on the left hand side here. I had these houses over here on the other side. I wouldn't have minded them so much, that's not so bad, but everybody else seemed to have the same idea that I did, so there was a lot of cars that were coming in here during these exposure times, and it was great actually to see so many people interested in photographing the aurora. But for me and for the guys there, just as you think you're getting a shot, you expose, then a car would come through. So I said, okay, well look, I don't own the place, I can only do what I'm doing, so I continued to take the shots. So as you can see here, even with that light gone, we still have some ambient light over here, and then the faint colors of the aurora. Again, this structure is still not sharp. So I continued to scroll on, I started to change that. You can see more of the cars, you can see the aurora kind of dancing in the sky. And then what we noticed after that then was that there was clouds coming in. So you can see this cloud down the background down here, and now if you watch the progression of this as it comes through, you will see this cloud starting to appear and come into the shot. So it kind of blocked out the main color within the aurora. It was still nice nonetheless, but it wasn't to its peak. So as this now will continue on, you'll see the cloud coming through, and you can see I'm doing too long of an exposure by the movements in the clouds. So again, the error is there because I'm not getting any structure in any of the pillars and the colors that were there. Never mind say the fact that the structure, which is the star of the show or the supporting actor, is not sharp. So a really simple but big error on my part from these. So now as this continues on, you can see again more clouds coming, so more clouds coming in the background again, and it was a stunning display. So I said, okay, I'm going to change my composition, and again I move now into a portrait orientation, but stupidly again I didn't check my focus. So you can see here we're getting this light, we're not getting any of the big pillars I would have had earlier on, so I missed those. And now as it's coming along here, you can see brake lights lighting these up as well from the cars that were putting in the background. So it was quite busy at this stage. The car park behind me was absolutely thronged. So I continued to take my shots, and I said, okay, it's time to go. And I turned the camera around, and this was looking in the opposite direction. Now you can see this is Bernard's van that was here because I had that for a week. I was starting my workshop the following day, and that was the reason why I had to leave, because my workshop was kicking off in Dublin. I picked this up from Mayo with Bernard, and now I'm in Roscommon when I'm taking this shot. So I had contacted a friend of mine. I said, is there a place for me to stay? He said, yeah, no problem. What time do you go to bed? Around 11 o'clock. I was an hour and 20 minutes away from him. So I said, okay, I can stay here till around the latest, maybe 20 past, 9:30. I didn't want to be arriving after they went to bed. And this was the shot that I took just as I was leaving. And then the whole thing was kicking off after that. I do know looking at the images afterwards that there was a bigger and a second blush and a corona right overhead, that I missed all of that. So unfortunately from the timing point of view there was nothing I could have done about that, but at the same point I was still happy that I managed to experience it anyway. Now hopefully you don't have to make those mistakes. Make sure you check your focus. Don't go for a fast a long exposure time. Go for a fast exposure and bump up your ISO and get as wide an aperture as you possibly can. Now the lenses I have, I'm not an astrophotographer, I'm not a portrait photographer. I use f4 lenses because they do me for 99.99% of the time, except for when I need to have more light, like in this scenario anyway. So yeah, there's my lessons learned. Hopefully, like I say, you can benefit from those mistakes. Now jumping over here into the image, so you've already seen my edit of this, and as you can see, looking at the settings, I was at 20 seconds and I was actually at f8 for some reason. I don't know why, but I had my ISO at 800 and I was at the widest I can go at 16mm. Now from that point of view here, I know that I got this guy relatively sharp because I hadn't moved the camera before then, but I've only got a small bit of the pillar, but it should have been a faster exposure so that I wouldn't have any movement in those pillars and I could keep that structure. So what I'll do here to start us off is just to show you the power of auto. So I'm going to click on auto, and you can see that auto has done quite a lot here, but it's brightened up the sky far too much, so I won't be using that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset this, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit the image like I normally would. So if I look here, and the first thing I want to do is say, okay, let's look at my highlights. And generally what I'll try and do here is I'll say, okay, what are my extremes? So it gives me an idea of what I can play with. Now the histogram is generally always going to tell me what I can do, but from a highlight point of view, if I take this and I bring my highlights all the way up, you see here it doesn't make much of a difference on the overall aspect of the image, so from standard to all the way up here, but it is making the sky a bit too bright from my own personal liking anyway. So I'm going to bring that, and I'm going to leave that around 56. Now shadows, most definitely I want to bring those up, but even at that you can see that there's nothing much happening here, because again I've underexposed the image, and particularly I'm at f8. I mean, silly mistakes. Okay, so whites, we're going to bring those up slightly, and then blacks, we're definitely going to bring those up as well. And now ultimately what I need to do is go into my exposure, and I need to really increase my exposure on the image here. And if you see here, what it's doing is it's bringing out all that detail here in the foreground. Now if I zoom in and give you a look here, you have quite a lot of noise for a number of reasons. Number one, it was quite dark. Number two, I'm at ISO 800, but I can fix that when it comes to the AI noise reduction. Looking at the structure here, you can see that this one is actually sharp, and you can also see that we have this pillar, but now looking at this, it's too bright in the sky. So what I want to do now on that is go back here to my highlights, and I'm going to bring my highlights down. And if you see now what this is doing, it's bringing out the details in that sky. So if I bring my heads all the way down like this, and now I say, okay, I bring my exposure slightly down like that, I can now get my sky. So the next thing I want to do from that is say, okay, am I going to change anything on dehaze? So if I look at dehaze and I bring this in here, it is making the sky darker. It is giving me more color overall on the image as well. So I might increase that here and go to probably around maybe 30. Yeah, 33 I think will be perfectly fine. But now it's showing me that there's darker than dark here on the structure. So I'm going to bring my blacks up, and by bringing my blacks up now, it's increasing the overall exposure on the image, but mainly because of the darker areas which are prominent in the sky. Now I want to look at my crop, because if I look here, there's a bit of aurora here in the sky, but it's not really adding much to the image. I want to be able to capture as much as I can within the relative frame. So I could go in and say, okay, I want to change that, and I want to move that into a 16:9. So if I move that to a 16:9 here, I am losing these pixels at the top, but they're not really adding much into the image for me. So I don't think I will do that. And then what I'm going to do after that is look at contrast. So contrast, now again, if I reduce the contrast, you can see here that I'm getting a softer image. If I increase the contrast, it's getting a more of a biting image, let's just say. So that's the contrast I'm going to do there. Now for pig iron, I'm going to look here and take my picker, and I'm going to pick one of the grey clouds, and I'm going to click on that just from my white balance point of view, because the colors are all over the place in relation to this. Now I don't like having the blue over here as well. So if I come down here and I go into my calibrations, I can now take my blue and I can take the saturation of my blue down, and as you see here, it's removing it on the left hand side, but it's also now hopefully going to be able to increase on the right hand side, because I'm going to take the saturation of the reds and I'm going to bring those up as well here. Now I can actually change the tint to those if I wanted to make it more of a purple, or I can make it, you know, less, more of an orange, but I don't want to do that. I want to leave it as natural to the colors that were actually there. And then if I come in here to my details and I go into my denoise, now this is probably going to give me a high number from a recommendation on denoise, and I might even have to increase it further. So if you look here on the preview, you can see that where it's looking at is areas on the grass, but I'm going to look at this guy. So if I move this out for a moment, and then I'm going to zoom in on this guy, you can see now what it does here on the structure. So on the structure, you can see all the noise that's around him, and now it smooths out that noise. But again, you know, it's not ideal, because again, I made the error. I wasn't at a fast enough shutter speed for what I wanted to look at, which is the aurora here. And you can see all this noise that's in the aurora, but now that also will smooth out that out, but it smooths it out then even more so I lose all of that clarity that's there as well. So I'm going to click on enhance on this here, and that effectively would be the image more or less done. Now I probably will end up spending more time, and I think I did on the original edit as well, but this is just a pure idea to show you not the edit but the mistakes that I've made. The images, they're okay. I'm not overly happy with them and disappointed, considering the glow that was there, the opportunity that was there, but you know, I lost focus, probably because I had other people that was there. I was talking to them as well, I was chatting away, it was a good crack, but I lost focus on what I should have been doing, and that's something that, you know, can happen very, very easily. And with my channel, I want to share everything with you, warts and all, what goes right, and on this occasion, what goes wrong. So thank you very much as always for joining me. I hope you can join me next week for next week's episode, which is this one here. I'm excited to share it all with you. If it's your first time on the channel, please do hit the subscribe button, give me a like, give me a comment, and until the next time, Slán go fóill.